This is beyond the pale. And I've listened to your testimony very deliberately here this morning. And I wish to God you protected the White House like you're protecting your reputation here today. This is the Secret Service against one individual with mental illness. And you lost. You lost. And you had 3 shots at this guy.
Congressman Stephen Lynch earlier this week fired up about Julia Pearson's testimony about a string of Secret Service security breaches. Congressman Lynch is joining us now from Boston, and here in Washington, Republican Congressman Jack Kingston. Good to have you both.
Jack, let's start with you. The White House hired this woman for optics after the prostitution scandal.
That's what some are saying.
Well, that's what all of our contacts are saying in the Secret Service and also inside the White House. Did they get what they deserved?
You know, I think there's a big question about that, because I do think that she did not have the background that was needed to run the entire agency. She had a good career, but probably not the best person for protection.
9/11, absolutely no protection in this area, security protection.
No experience with protective services, and you can't play around with this. You know, you had the situation in Colombia, and that was a public relations disaster, but one of the statements that she was famous for making was that the Secret Service needed to resemble Disneyland more. Well, that's not the case at all. We want these folks to be tough. We want them to be unmerciful. We want them to protect the president and his family and visiting dignitaries. And it's not a public relations firm.
I'm not sure the context of that, of those comments. I want to be careful. Stephen Lynch, do you agree?
Well, I do think the White House got what they wanted, and they were looking at the frat boy nature, the prostitute issue down in Colombia, and they brought in someone who was antithetical to that type of behavior.
Right.
So they got what they wanted in that context, but the security issue was secondary, I think.
So Jack, where do we go next? What do we need to do next to make sure this doesn't happen?
Well, I think what Chairman McCall and John Boehner have talked about is having a blue ribbon commission to figure out what we need to do. I mean, you know, this wasn't the only time. Joe, I had an experience getting on the elevator by accident with President Bush one time. You can't get on an elevator with a president by accident, and yet that just happened. That alone should have been a big question. How does that happen by accident? Somebody with a record getting on an elevator?
With a weapon.
With a weapon.
With a weapon.
So Congressman Lynch, it'd be very easy for us just to blame Director Pearson, but obviously we've had one mistake after another, after another, after another. Isn't there a much bigger culture problem here that actually might encourage terrorists across the world to take a shot at the president?
I think so. I think we need to start at the very beginning. We need to look at what we're doing in Glencoe, Georgia, and we've got to make sure that what we're training our agents for today is really the reality on the ground. I think in some sense the Secret Service may be fighting the last war, and we need to make sure that they're war gaming all of these possibilities with terrorist groups looking at the White House, especially. You know, they must be greatly encouraged now because we had one mentally ill gentleman able to get in the green room. So if this was a nefarious group with resources and a plan, things could have gone much worse.
Let me say this. Steve, you mentioned the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia, which is in my district. I'm very familiar with it. They do a great job. We have to keep in mind that there were 5 rings of security that were breached in this case. The Secret Service did not shut down the room. They did not lock it down, if you will.
Boxes.
They did not raise the threat level. There was an alarm that apparently had been put on mute. And all the training in the world, you know, they were trained to do that. They did not follow their own protocol. They ignored it.
All right, Jack, thank you.
Jack,
appreciate you being here. Good to see you.
Thank you both.
Great to see you guys.